the voice of the Siena Saints. He was on the call last night in the MAC Championship. 87-86. It goes in favor of the Iona Gales, and that is A.J. Kanell. And A.J., I see the shot go up overtime. Nico Clares possibly for the win. Did you feel like how I did in the crowd that this was going to be the storybook ending for the Saints, and that shot just was destined to go in for them?
I don't know. I mean, I guess the answer would probably have to be yes, because every other possession in overtime besides that one ended with a make for the team. And, Iona only missed one shot in overtime, but they got the offensive rebound and then ended up putting it back on that possession. And you know what Nico has been doing during the tournament. But, the fact of the matter is he's been struggling in that game. In that possession, I think everybody that was involved would look back and say that's not the shot you wanted there. You hope it goes in, but to have a player fading away when you're down 2 and taking, 25-foot three, that's not probably the best case scenario. Probably the best idea is to try and get inside. And, Marquise, I think, tried to do that, but it didn't end up working out. And, it was an open shot. So, there are worse looks out there, but it's just unfortunate that it had to end that way.
Brian touched on this a bit early on in the show that Coach Patsos considered going for the timeout, trying to get the timeout, then the play was called. Did you think, and you've covered this team all season long, is that a spot where Coach Patsos may have needed to consider timeout, draw up a play, and then see what happens after that?
I get what people are saying there with that criticism, but to me, I think that's not, it's kind of a little bit of a displacement from being in touch with what they've done all season. Like if you're sort of, tuning in right now, and I'm not talking to anybody in particular, but I'm sort of just saying, look, if you haven't followed sort of step by step, what they like to do in those situations, and that's an easy criticism to make, but the fact of the matter is, if you've been following the Siena Saints, you know that Coach Patsos doesn't like to use a timeout in that situation. So it's tough to say, okay, this is the way you've done it all year. Now, in overtime, down by 2, we're going to change the way we've been doing things all year. So you kind of just got to take it or leave it. Like, that's the way he does it in that situation. The other thing is they were down to one timeout with just 4 or 5 minutes, whatever it was, left in regulation. And they got the extra timeout added because the overtime period, you get an extra timeout. And then they used one timeout in overtime. But what I'm saying is they spent about 5, 6, 7 minutes of game action without using a timeout. And think about how many clutch possessions they converted on without using a timeout for all that time of the game, from about 3 or 4 minutes left in overtime about 3 or 4 minutes left in regulation to near the end of overtime, you score over and over and over again without using a timeout. So now the one possession you fail on, the one possession you don't score on in overtime, we're going to look back and say, oh my goodness, they didn't call timeout. To me, it's very much a case of hindsight 2020 there. And, I wouldn't be defending a move if I didn't feel like it was the right thing to say. I'm not just defending it just because I'm the Siena guy. To me, I'm a fan also, quite frankly, of not using the timeout there. I mean, I think that in basketball, that letting the players kind of have their rhythm and their movement and just sort of let the players work it out for themselves, that ends up actually working out more often than not, unless you have kind of like the perfect play to draw up. And again, all overtime long, they've been scoring. So it's tough. It's a bitter pill to swallow to go down like that when it was just so close, and one play here or there could have changed the game. But to me, to take that game and the entire Siena run, including the Monmouth game, and then the Iona game, and then all boil it down to one timeout that wasn't used, that's just not fair.
He's the voice of the Siena Saints. He was on the call last night for the MAC Championship. A.J. Kanell joins us here on Big Board Sports on 104.5 The Team.
A.J., going through the game was just full of runs. Siena started off quick, and then Iona went on their 17-1 run. But ultimately, I think the game, in my opinion, was won and lost at the free throw line. Iona went 18 of 21, but Siena went 19 of 30. Could this be something is it just that they struggled with all year, or could this be just they played 3 games in like a 36-hour span?
I mean, I don't know. I think that it goes back to me how good Iona was in the game, more so than Siena lost the game. Because if you look at a lot of those free throws, guys, it was Oganyemi missing it early. Oganyemi was 4 of 10 from the foul line, but many of those misses came early in the game. Brett Bisping had to hit 2 free throws to even send the game to overtime. At the start of overtime, Marquise Wright had 2 key free throws to tie the game, and he did. So while that was important, and Iona deserves all the, I think Iona helped themselves win it with their 18 and 21. But I didn't really get the sense that, you look at the box score, yeah, Iona did a way better job at the foul line, 86% to Siena 63%. But again, many of those Siena misses were early in the game, so I didn't really get the sense that, down the stretch, that necessarily made the difference in the game. I think it's been a case, though, where you've hit on something that's been an up and down element of Siena basketball all year. The free throw shooting, just the shooting in general. I think that's going to be a big thing going into next year. To either within the team or finding other players that are able to more consistently knock down shots in general, whether it be free throw shooting or 3-point shooting, because that was an element in the game, and just shot making in general, that maybe made the difference. Iona just had more players that could put the ball in the hoop, and Siena almost pounded the daylights out of them enough to win anyway. They out-rebounded them by 18 in the game. But, Iona didn't even really shoot that well for what they usually do necessarily. I mean, they're kind of just on their average. They're on their average pretty much as far as how they shoot. But, I think you're generally right in the sense that Siena needs more players who can put the ball in the hoop and they're better pure shooters. I don't think, though, that specifically the free throw shooting down the stretch, it's a little deceiving because many of those misses were early in the game.
Any indication where Siena may play this postseason? Are we talking CBI, NIT?
Well, I heard a little bit of what Coach said during the press conference, that he's doubtful. That, to me, makes sense. I mean, they've already gone with this group and they've won the CBI. I mean, how much more do you have to prove in that tournament? Personally, if they want to go send us to Vegas, I'll take that. A new Vegas tournament. But I don't know. I think, with a group like this, it's a senior-laden team. How much of a purpose does it serve? A lot of these tournaments are for kind of younger teams to build confidence for the future, where these guys are they've gone through the ringer this season, had a long season, and it's a bunch of upperclassmen. So how worth it is that? And, if they get together and they decide that we want to just make one more run and play some more games together as a team, then they'll do it. I wouldn't be surprised if they did that, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they just called it a season and started to look forward to next year. To me, it's kind of up in the air. I'm not quite sure what they're going to decide.
So with that postseason future still up in the air, I'll ask this question. If it is the end here, would you consider the 2016-2017 Siena men's basketball season a success?
I think that it's not the ultimate success because all these players and the coaches wanted to go win a MAC title, but it's degrees of success. I think the regular season was not a success. You can break it up. I think the regular season was not a success. They came in with as much talent as any mid-major team, and they went 500 pretty much. Got off to a bad start. I think a major part of that, though, was the tough schedule. I mean, it got tougher and tougher. You could sort of see why it was tough as the season progressed, when the teams that they played in non-conference play started to do better and better throughout the course of their own conference play. Right now, the Siena non-conference schedule is, I think, 15th best in the country or something as far as what it's up to in rating. And Florida Gulf Coast, they won their conference title. Bucknell is the favorite in the Patriot League. There, some other teams have some work to do, but obviously Kansas is at the very top of the country. So it's become more and more clear how difficult of a schedule they played in non-conference play. That played a factor. I think the regular season, it was a mixed bag, and it really wasn't a success. But the season in general, and certainly the MAC tournament, it's tough to say, that wasn't a success based on one bounce of the basketball here or there. Because it's a bottom line thing. In mid-major basketball, you got to win that tournament, or if you don't win that game, well, then everybody else is just headed home. It's really a tough position to be in. You play and ask Monmouth. Think about the season that they had, and yet they're not going to be probably going to the NCAA tournament because they lost one basketball game at the wrong time of the year. So was it the ultimate success? No. Did they show what they could do, and did they put Siena basketball to a certain extent on the national map? Again, at least for now, yeah, with that victory over a team the caliber of Monmouth, and on ESPN2 showcasing what the MAC has to offer in terms of caliber of basketball last night in that game. But if you combine the regular season sort of back and forth, and then ultimately failing to win the MAC championship, I'd have a tough time calling the year a success. I wouldn't call it a failure. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I don't think I'd call it a success.
He is the voice of the Siena Saints. He is A.J. Kanell. And A.J., if somehow, some way you get a +2 to the Las Vegas postseason tournament, we are more than willing to go with you. We'll just toss that out there, okay?
I'll take it, guys. And I would like to say before you guys let me go, appreciate you guys having me on this year. And also just thanks to Jimmy Patsos and the Siena coaching staff. Those guys are great basketball coaches. They know the sport. And I said something in the post-game show. I'll repeat it here. Just that when I'm sure you guys have touched on this subject, when people talk about the NCAA, it's amazing like how people they criticize the NCAA, so then they're the first people to not actually care about the stuff that they're being critical of. Like when it comes down to it, like when I say right now, like people are just going to kind of wince when I say, "Oh, Coach Passos cares about academics," and they care about the coaching staff cares about the student athletes. Like you're like, "Oh, he's being cheesy. He's just being a shill for the school," but they actually do. They really care about people. They care about the broadcasters. They care about the staff members that work for the program. And they care about the student athletes and their overall school experience and what they're like as people, their experiences as people. So I think the coaching staff does a great job of that, and they're just, they're leaders and they're models for what the NCAA is looking for, because people wouldn't have anywhere near as much to complain about if more administrators and coaches that were involved actually wanted to help the student. Like if the student athletes got a great education, then people probably wouldn't be complaining about the whole payment thing, because then you're actually getting the education elements of it. So I think, again, the Siena coaching staff, they're leaders in that category, just actually caring about people as people. And I hope that people around here understand that, understand how special it is.
That's well said, AJ. Appreciate your time, man. We'll catch up again this offseason. Take care.
Thanks, guys.